top three, and then I thought, you know what? I'd actually debate that with you. It is an interesting. Sorry, it's not an interesting question, but
let's make that clear.
I love the sound of a snooker referee counting up the score.
That last one. You're welcome along. It's A Slight Tangent. Joe Molloy here. We have Arthur O'D to my left. We have Michael McCarthy to my left. And in a surprise turn of events, we have Ronan Mullen to my right. You may have seen, eagle-eyed viewers may have seen Ronan had his going away piece on Friday. And yet here he is, less than 48 hours, shamelessly swanning back in. So just explain, we have said to Ronan, we'll still beg him to come back on the odd occasion from the hard shoulder, where he's now doing great things, and to appear on the occasional A Slight Tangent. Yeah. Although interestingly, excitingly, we're going to have some guest appearances from various people in that chair. Top of my list, if we can convince him to do it, will be Kenny Cunningham at some stage. But the ethos of A Slight Tangent will continue. But Ronan, welcome back to Off the Ball.
I still hold veto on whoever sits here, so it's kind of like when Gary Neville stepped away from Monday Night Football, and it has to be a certain calibre of guest to come out and sit here.
You're a wrestling fan, yeah?
Well, vaguely.
Do you remember years ago when Mick Foley retired and there was a
he came back?
There's the whole big thing of like, I won't be one of those guys who comes back in 6 weeks, and then they behind the scenes convinced them to come back for one more match to the WrestleMania main event. They came back and Foley was like, I said I wouldn't be back in 6 weeks, so I came back in 4.
You say Mick Foley, I say Michael Jordan. So like in The Last Dance, where he releases that press release, is like just 2 words, I'm back. Yeah. So something to that effect. But
okay, well, you're welcome back.
It's good to be back.
You were badly missed
in the last 48 hours. Yeah, when you say I'm going away, I can literally see my desk from here. It's like a Seamus Coleman.
We'll probably see you more now because you won't be working remotely at all. You're just in the office all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. How you find the hard shoulder so far? Be honest.
Again, only day 2, Joe. It's not a huge frame of reference.
Be honest.
He's a slave driver, isn't he? What was said about him?
Yeah. Watch out for Cudahy.
That's the word around the office in general, I think.
Not even joking. So.
Okay,
I am, of course.
He is joking.
A Slight Tangent. I actually am joking. A Slight Tangent at offtheball.com is the newly set up email address. So we've had a few early nibbles at the old email account before we get to some of our talking points. This, by the way, various people are on holiday, so it's kind of it took a break. And Mick said last night, if this doesn't happen tomorrow, I fear it will be gone forever. So he said, right, let's try and put some life back into it this evening. Hence, here we are. So we've got a few things to talk about. This slot is effectively where Team OTB and Ronan generally just chew the fat about whatever is kind of catching our fancy. Yeah. So just an hour of the however many hours we do across the schedule where we just talk about nothing too in-depth or too serious, or who knows, we may get there. So some of the emails in, I thought Tony asked a good question. I mentioned it at the top of the show to you. Lads, and maybe you three probably increasingly have a feel for this more than me. What is the most common excuse people give for not coming on Off the Ball? Wonders Tony.
Does anyone say no to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Or just blanks me.
Yeah.
I would say the most common is a blank.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
With the double blue tick. It's a real slap in the face. It's worse than nothing. It's worse than giving some excuse. It's worse than abuse. Like, I'd rather someone come back to me and tell, that much? No way.
Yeah.
But just reading it, not bothering.
I would say, in my experience, correct me if I'm wrong, it depends on the sport. In GAA, we all know what the winner is.
Well, there's one that comes to mind, an All-Ireland winner in the last decade. I'll keep it vague.
Go on.
Said something like, we were like, do you want to come on the show tonight to chat about winning? And they were like, I neither want to nor care about coming on.
Oh, really?
And I was like, all right. Succinctly put, but harsh.
Ooh.
Harsh. Yeah.
Do I know who that is?
Well, it's a very high-profile player, but...
you do, yeah.
Hey, wow. I would say, I was going to say the most common refrain we get in GAA is, I'm just keeping the head down at the moment. Yeah. Just keeping the head down. That's the GAA response.
We got one this year, actually, from a player who was, we thought had an interesting story outside of the current season, and he was like, yeah, I'll just ask the boss man. I don't know if boss man was the exact word, was
boss
it?
Man Steel?
I wasn't boss man Steel. This is GAA now, so I'll just ask this is the main man or the boss man or something. And then next day, predictably, he said no chance.
Yeah.
Oh no,
I'll talk to you in the off season.
when they say I'm going to check, with someone else, that's the end of that.
Yeah.
Like, whatever chance you have of getting them directly, it's better to ask for, what's the phrase? Better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure, in the GA circles, yeah.
To give a genuine answer
Go
to
on.
the question, it
Yeah.
is too busy.
Too busy.
Especially for people that we know and that will come on regularly and that will do it if they can. And that is look, to be honest, let's be fair and nice. The vast majority of people that we speak to the odd time will try and help us out when they can, and they enjoy doing the show.
Yeah.
But from time to time, just have too much on or can't do it tonight. GA people, especially retired GA people who we use as pundits, tend to be involved in training an awful lot.
Yeah.
We almost know what nights not to go after certain guys because there's club training, be it as a mentor, selector, coach, or still player in a lot of situations, and people have training an awful lot, I would say.
Kids to bed. A lot
Kids to bed is
increasingly kids to bed.
Very
Yeah.
normal
People,
reasons. Yeah.
people in their late 30s, early 40s are very, very rarely available between the hours of 7 and about 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Busy times. It's probably not our story to tell. High-profile chess player had the all-time greatest response.
Yeah. It isn't our story to tell, no. It's in a previous
Right, okay, we're going to move on.
iteration. But yeah, no, it was, look, I mean, it's a well-told story, but Gary Kasparov was asked for an interview by Simon Hick back in the day, and he was, a very nice response came to say, oh, no problem, he will require, there was a list of a few things, I don't remember them all, but it definitely included $10,000 and a comfortable chair.
Yeah, it was a Mariah Carey style rider he was asking for there. Fair play to him.
But it was very much oh yeah, this is an interesting request, no problem, yeah. And I think the reply went back was like, we can give you €40.
A comfortable chair.
No, there's no comfortable chair, we'll do it over the phone. You can sit in your own comfortable chair, Gary.
Graham in touch, lads. Spare me the hypocrisy of all these golfers. A win for the good guys was how Shane Lowry put it after Wentworth. Don't get me wrong, I'm no admirer of Sergio or Patrick Reed. The point is, if Rory and pals were all against live on ethical, sports washing, Saudi Arabian human rights grounds, I would have the utmost respect. However, none of them talk about that. None of them mention Khashoggi or LGBTQ rights. The biggest objection half of them seem to have is that the tournaments are only 54 holes. They're all mercenaries. Spare the good guys stuff. Agree, says Graham? I think in the vast majority of cases, Graham, that's probably very true. Yeah, I think that's fair.
It's a bit cut and dry, that one.
Big cut and dry.
Yeah.
Few exceptions.
There's other things for them to have issues with that doesn't necessarily have to be about the human rights element. I think that Shane Lowry actually spoke pretty well about the disruptive element of the kind of players coming back to the PGA at Wentworth at the weekend and them possibly doing it for the wrong reasons and possibly looking to make a little bit of noise and a little bit of disruption, again, as Lowry said. I can understand where he's coming from in that. If you've made this big deal to break away, yet you're being insisted on being part of what was there before, and you're making a lot of noise to do it, and you're stopping other people having games. I'd say they'd have an issue with it. Whether we as a general public are as worried about that sort of thing, I would say is less obvious.
And I guess they're allowed to care about the fabric of the game, which is genuinely under threat now, and there'll be no feeder tours, and the whole thing is going to cause a lot of issues down the line. So they're allowed of those reasons as well. There's a tennis email from Ian just on the back of the Alcaraz piece we did last night. He was saying, like lots of people, big tennis fan, 90s, was very much along for the ride, in particular with the big three, then he has in brackets, and Andy Murray and Serena doing her thing. Enjoyed the piece on Carlos Alcaraz last night with Caitlin Thompson, who did say, by the way, this guy's good enough to walk in the shoes of the big three. But he says, have to say, can't get on board with any of the emerging players. I will keep an eye on Alcaraz, but nobody, male or female, has caught the imagination for me yet, reckons Ian. I think that's common enough.
Yeah, it's just hard to buy into anybody's credentials yet, isn't it? Because we had Luke Jensen on ebullient after Raducanu's win, like her seamless win in that major, and then to say her form hasn't continued in that vein that he had kind of pegged it for. I'm not saying Luke was alone in that by any means, but he was beaming at like the next Star is Born type vibes, and she may well still be, but
Osaka,
the last year hasn't gone that out. Yeah,
Coco Gauff could still come, I think.
Yeah, but you're still waiting on her, and it might not happen. It might. But
sorry, I was just going to think, is this a case that the dynamic is broken though? So if you take those big three plus Murray plus Williams, there's the guts of about 100 majors or 100 slams there.
Yeah.
A little bit under, you know. So there's 8 a year.
Not bad.
Men and women over, you know what I mean? So I mean, are we just kind of, someone like Osaka has 4, and it kind of seems like she's not living up to her potential. It's like McEnroe has 7, and he's seen as this, you know, she well get that. I just wonder, kind of, is it a case that we're not as interested because no one's as dominant, and we are accustomed, I suppose, to dominance now. If you're really great, you're going to absolutely dominate, which probably isn't an accurate reflection.
Do you think those individual sports benefit from superstars?
That's true.
And rivalries.
Osaka's huge. Osaka's, I'm pretty sure, the biggest earning female sports person in the year last year.
Yeah, but she's not doing it on the court at all.
But she's a superstar.
But
Yeah.
McEnroe's superstardom comes from as much as talent, and 7 Grand Slams is great, but it's not what we've been talking about. It's not Nadal, Djokovic, Federer style, but his rivalry with Bjorn Borg, his rivalry with Jimmy Connors, etc., and his personality is what made, like, Nick Kyrgios could be that big if he also was winning them and had rivalries and was winning Grand Slams, you know, but that isn't the case. There's another question though, lads, is like, it's a conversation I think we had a few weeks ago.
Sounds right.
Sports aren't going to break through in the way they have in the past. So when, like, this generation is gone and we were still in an element, a lot of people were growing up watching Roger Federer, watching Rafa Nadal, watching Serena Williams, maybe to a lesser extent Djokovic. And now tennis isn't breaking through in the way it was. And that's going to be very hard to get back. And it's because, we talked about it before, it was like, if I just wanted to watch football, I could have 24 hours a day new content all the time. If I was, you know, and there isn't that calendar of, right, I'm watching tennis now, or I'm watching golf, or I'm watching Formula 1, whatever it is. I don't know, like that there's almost the times a year where it's like the amount of people who are kind of watching every sport and know a little bit about it all is lessening, I think, for the growth of somebody who knows an awful lot about one thing.
Probably right. Like, I do remember growing up weirdly really liking Todd Martin, the tennis player.
Oh yeah.
That wouldn't happen.
Way before his time, poor old Todd, wasn't he?
Yeah. He was, yeah. Distinguished, I would have said. Yeah. And Lindsay Davenport. You know, these again are not players I think you'd
big fan of the Americans, were you?
grab hold of. Yeah, I was actually.
Coming over to Wimbledon, they always respected the old sod, didn't they?
They did. Sorry, Arthur, I do agree. To undercut my point though, on Osaka, I just said, well, she's not doing it on the court. Although, to be fair, I'd be more inclined to watch an Osaka match than any of the other players maybe in the top 10 at the moment. So there you go. Mo Salah's just scored for Liverpool on 19 minutes, so it is 1-0 to Liverpool against Ajax. We'll press on. So something which caught our eye, I'm curious to throw this out of the group and see what you think. Reading here from the London Times. So in rugby, unions are going to be allowed to make an individual decision for the autumn tests on whether to put names on backs of rugby jerseys. And this could be in the Six Nations next year if all 6 unions give it the thumbs up. So what the report says, England's test shirts could be adorned with player names for the first time this autumn in a bid to promote the stars of the game to a wider audience. The idea has been raised over recent months at meetings between the Six Nations unions, with those in favour keen to market players better. It's believed the English union is the most engaged with the plan. 2 of the other Six Nations are interested, and the RFU is considering printing names on test shirts this November in the Autumn Nations series. The piece goes on to say, some argue that, particularly at international level, no player should, quote, own a shirt, and that printing a name on the back would contradict rugby's traditions, and that no individual should be placed above the team. Though I would think if every individual has a name on their shirt, they're not being placed above the team. It's not like just Owen Farrell gets a name on his jersey. I'll push on.
Farrell would have told you, nobody else.
Yeah. The piece says, Itoje 4, Smith 10, Farrell 12 would particularly appeal to the younger generation. And World Rugby regulations at the moment state that starters must be numbered 1 to 15, substitutes must be 16 to 23. And, well, one of the concerns raised as well is this all gets very messy. Like, they use Tom Curry as an example for England. So Curry has worn the number 7 shirt 22 times, number 6 12 times, and the number 8 jersey 7 times. So that's the London Times. What are our thoughts on this? Rugby's values, Arthur?
The right man answer that question.
Speak
to rugby's values here.
Speak from your heart, Arthur.
I don't like that type of thing about, nobody owns a jersey. You're just like, They're not like it's a very ephemeral kind of idea. Like it's not like it's a piece of cloth, and someone who does get it will own it. They will take that home with them. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure they probably get to keep them.
They literally own that jersey.
Like it's just kind of not like I'm kind of two way on it, because I don't think it should follow the way most other sports have gone, or say the way football's gone, just because football's gone that way. But like it's just to kind of tie it up, as opposed to it's a cash grab, I suppose. Ultimately, it's there to make money, and I think to kind of go like. If the argument against it happening is just a case of values against the money that might be made off it, I don't see the values holding up.
The values argument is an odd one. So, would you see it working whereby players aren't given names on jerseys for a season, or even for, like, based on the World Rugby rules, you couldn't even have a World Cup jersey with your name on it. It would have to be each new game is a new set of jerseys with a new name, 1 to 15 with the correct jersey. Like, you can't have Owen Farrell, for instance, playing the first game of the World Cup with number 12 on his jersey, and then Smith gets injured and Farrell spends the rest of the World Cup playing at 10 in a 12 jersey, I think.
That's the plan for November anyway.
Is it?
For England, yeah. Like they're going to play 1 to 50. It's 1 to 23 each game. So it's like...
Oh, sorry, each game. So it does change each game.
So I'm pretty sure that's what the England football team do at the moment. So while Ireland play with squad numbers or whatever, and most other countries do, England play 1 to 11 in every game, but have the names on the jerseys.
I quite like that, I have to say. I think that's a really good balance. For international level, like I think at club level it's different.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely no reason to not have names on the jerseys. I think any worries about that, I kind of agree with Arthur. I don't see any problem with it. I would have a problem with it evolving into squad numbers, though.
Okay.
For rugby, I think again, and I really hate the homogenization almost of sport, of it all, everything having to be like the other sports.
Yeah.
You know, and football has done this thing, which is fine. Numbers don't matter in football. Numbers are more important now that they don't exist anymore than they ever were when teams wore 1 to 11 all the time. You know, people talk in numbers now that haven't existed in 30 years. And when they did, people played, like Liverpool always played with completely random numbers. Like number 5 was in midfield for Liverpool, holding midfielder was number 11.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, there's other things as well.
There is increasingly like so much talk of a 6 and an 8 midfielder in football. Like, to be fair,
never existed.
A number 9, I think, is a thing, and a number 10 is kind of a thing. But this 6 and 8 business is about 5 years old.
But I've started saying it now as well, and keep like, you know, calling myself out on air, because you slip into it, you hear it so much, it becomes part of the culture.
I'm on air talking about, is that number 8 good in transitions and want to like retire?
That double pivot leaves a lot to be desired.
Oh my God.
But rugby doesn't need, like, so it's weird that that's become a thing in football, because ultimately it never was, and squad numbers have been there for 30 years, and it's fine. It doesn't matter. And look, people will always want the number 10, they'll always want the number 9, they'll always want a 7, etc. But when it comes to rugby, I think it's important. I think the 1 to 23, now the subs do change from time to time, and that's natural. They've obviously changed the amount of subs, but the 1 to 15, let's say, I think is in some way sacrosanct. And I don't care about rugby values, but it explains the game.
Why are you laughing?
Sacrosanct.
Because the game is played to the sport.
I agree with
the game. The game is
right,
played in a very set formation, and players have like positions that are far more important than they are in either Gaelic games or football. What are you laughing
I'm laughing at Arthur's laugh.
All right, okay. Like, there's literally a position in rugby called number 8.
Yeah. You can't have a lad playing number 42 for the whole season.
Why?
You can't.
Well, like you're talking about 6s and 8s in football, and number 10s and false 9s, and
he'd still be called number 8, but you know.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
It happens. Somebody comes on off the bench and goes to number 8. We don't get confused. We still call them number 8. I just do think that having a 1 to 15 is an important layout of how
I agree with you.
Of the team.
But I love the idea of names on the backs of jerseys.
Why do you love it?
I think it's better. Like, it's quicker to identify players.
Yeah.
I think this is not the right word. I think it's cooler. Like, I think there is a bit more marketing about it, because like in a host of positions, it won't be in any way iconic. But in a bunch like a Toge 4, O'Driscoll 13, you know, pick the handful of players, the stars of the game. Suddenly their numbers will become a bit synonymous with them, and I don't think that's a bad thing, actually.
I think Marcus Smith already has like merchandise with that squad number anyway. So
Right.
it's like it wouldn't exactly be a preemptive move to make it. And I know Wales did it before. I don't know if you said that already, Joe, but
No.
like in the past had names on their jerseys, and if you want to use the Gaelic Games parallel again, when the international rules team play, it's obviously alphabetical and numbered accordingly, and they had names on their jerseys on a couple of instances. So even in sports where it's not common, it's not beyond the bounds either, I don't think. And why should rugby forego like a very like concrete marketing strategy just for the sake of romance? Like, I don't see why they should have to do that.
I wonder how much money it'll make them though, because especially in the club game, and I don't know about the international game, like a lot of the jersey is taken up by sponsors at the moment in a way more so than almost any other sport.
Yeah.
And what sponsor gets sacrificed for Maro Itoje's name? For Saracens, I suppose, not for England. It's not an issue at the moment.
Yeah. And do you not think, Arthur, you'd sort of lose something if an amazing goal by Kudos for Ajax, 27 minutes on the clock, so it's
Headline
1-1
writes
at
itself,
Anfield.
Joe.
Yes,
Headline writes
indeed. I
itself.
know, I was thinking, could that really be his name? And it is, of course. So it's an amazing left-footed goal. I think it's either upright or underside of the crossbar. I think it's underside of the crossbar from distance, and it's 1-1 at Anfield between Liverpool and Ajax, 27 minutes on the clock. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, sorry. I get your eye rolling when rugby talks about its values and words like sacrosanct, but do you think...
That was Mick's word, to be fair.
Well, indeed. But you
I
scoffed.
stand by
You
that
scoffed.
word
You
for
scoffed.
the context of what I was saying.
The question I was going to ask you, do you not think rugby would lose a little bit of something as we see that bullet of a goal again and everybody looks? It's a 1-1 at Anfield. Do you not think rugby would
Virgil
lose?
van Dijk is making a habit of standing off.
Isn't he? Really, he loves the hands behind the
in the
back,
box,
stand off
yeah.
these days.
He's getting a great view of some of these goals. I have to say.
Indeed, yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
God's sake. That,
Number 4, Virgil van Dijk.
I presume, Arthur, though, whatever about words like sacrosanct, you wouldn't like rugby to go down a route whereby players get squad numbers and you have like number 33 playing in the scrum and number 18 playing in the scrum and starting games in those numbers with their names? Or would you say, screw it, let's go whole hog?
I think, I find it funny, like you'd say you wouldn't like, I wouldn't mind one way or another. I don't think it makes any difference. Like, what
Do you
difference
not
would
think it does? To
No,
like
but
the
like, look at-
fabric of it?
But like, look at like a sport like basketball, like American football. Like, what difference does it make?
They've always been that way, though. Why should rugby suddenly tear
I'm sure
up
at
what they've
some
had?
point basketball started out 1 to 5.
You're saying this though, American football has actually very specific rules that are different for professional and college for what the numbers are, and they changed them last year, and it's baffling to watch a game. You don't even realise how much you knew. You weren't paying attention. I don't know the rules, but suddenly I see guys in defence now wearing single digits, like, because that wasn't allowed before, and it's so confusing. You don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, numbers actually do matter. You become accustomed to them and where people play. Now I'm going off on a slight tangent.
Long story
Short,
short,
say tangent, and I put in slight because it's the name of the slot.
long story short, I don't think it would matter. I don't think it would matter too much
You
at all.
wouldn't miss that.
No, but like I'm not sure what.
Because I don't really like in football the numbers thing.
Really?
Yeah, I don't.
But like,
I hate seeing like number 77 and stuff.
why? What? Like
I just
what?
think it's silly.
Okay, well, I mean that's
It's like,
that's
it's
fine.
like
I mean,
1 to 11.
I think it's silly as well. I think, like, what like, say if you're
Silly.
Trent Alexander-Arnold and you've come through as 66
Not my best argument.
because you were a kid and that was the number you had.
Yeah.
Do you think he's entitled to keep that, or when?
Sort of,
like,
yeah.
At the same time, though, when Klein left Liverpool and 2 became open, Alexander-Arnold should have taken 2.
I think he should have, yeah.
That's great marketing from him though. Like the logo looks good, the AA66. So
Yeah.
I think someone above him probably told him, yeah, that story's cute and all, but I think that's a good idea.
See,
Actually,
there's certain players I'd have a bit of flexibility with, and he falls into that bracket. But like
Yeah.
if the Brighton right back is that crack, I'd say no, just wear number 2.
Yeah, or 41s and things like that. That kind of, that people stick with. I understand when you come through with it, but
Foden's
move
40
up.
something, isn't he?
Yeah, 47, I think. Yeah,
Stick him in a 10.
ugly
jersey.
number. 47's an ugly number.
Jesus.
I agree. It's an ugly number.
Like,
Do you not think?
no, what difference does it make? Like,
Well, I suppose it doesn't make a difference, but it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't work. I don't think it works. Number 47, Phil Foden.
These are far more important matters than you let on, Arthur. I don't know.
I just.
Where are you on this?
I'm
Ronan?
shocked, Arthur, by your position.
Where are you on this? You're sitting quiet over there.
No, I'm not. I think
He's not allowed to have opinions anymore.
the numbers. I'm actually
We'll
quite
go over to the hard shoulder.
intrigued by the the history of the squad number actually in football in particular. Like, it would be a quirky little pastime of mine. Like, I would actually remember a lot of those numbers of the odd ones.
It's around in the crappy quiz at the moment.
It is. The one time I had to answer a question on that, I got it right. It was the Les Ferdinand. What number did he switch from? Here we go, Joe. What number did Les Ferdinand switch from at Newcastle when Alan Shearer signed?
Oh,
Alan Shearer took his number 9.
well, obviously from 9
Yeah.
to, what was Ferdinand? 18?
Ooh, you're close. It's 10.
Close but way off.
Oh, that's okay.
in the
That's
ballpark.
a good switch.
There was a rumour he was going to go 99 at the time, which would have been the first time anybody had gone absolutely mad. And I think Kenny Dalglish or whoever it was said, "Don't be so stupid."
I know Sherry.
Here you go.
I know Sheringham when he pitched up at United said, "Well, I'm getting 10,"
Yeah.
and took it off Beckham.
Or
Oh,
is
yeah.
it not that Beckham went to 7?
I'm
since
presuming
Cantona was
Beckham
gone?
went to 7, yeah.
Well, no, then 7 opened up and he jumped at 7.
Was it Zamorano
Yes.
when
8 plus
Ronaldo went to Inter?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
The 8 plus 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. See,
Tremendous.
tremendous. But as a rule, you deflected there wonderfully. I still don't know what you think.
No, from what point? Like, I love the squad numbers in football. I'm very interested in it, so I have no problem with foregoing the 1 to 11 whenever did that. Was that 80s, 90s?
Yeah.
But, I have no particular...
You don't mind it.
In
was
terms
93,
of
94.
from the rugby point of view, I think if the only thing holding it back are those values, I think they could possibly move beyond that.
I used to love in Football Manager when it came to time of the season to name your squad numbers. That was a great
It's
part
been
of that
about 30 minutes picking my squad numbers.
Oh
I
my
love
God.
it. Love it.
I was at Arsenal one time when Dennis Bergkamp retired. I tried to retire the number 10. Just had no more number 10s on my squad.
There's a great Twitter account. I think it's just @squad_numbers that takes exception when someone gets numbered like way out of odds. So like William Gallas got the number 10 at Arsenal.
I don't agree with that.
Even you, Arthur.
I don't agree
there
with
you
that.
go.
But you can't just have like you
No,
can't
you can
have
have
limits
certain-
on your.
there's certain
That,
things.
that is
nonchalance.
beyond the pale.
That's
Clint
too
Dempsey number
much.
2.
I'm
we
okay.
could go all night.
Yeah.
Sadly, we have to take an ad break, but we'll return in just one moment. Still 1-1 at Anfield, Liverpool against Ajax. This is Joe Molloy and Arthur O'D and Mick McCarthy and Ronan Mullen on a slight tangent. We have more tangents to embark on in just a moment. Now you're welcome back. This is a slight tangent making a heroic return after several weeks off the air, given holidays and various issues. It's Joe Molloy here. We have Arthur O'D, Mick McCarthy, and 2 working days after he left off the ball and had to send off Ronan Mullen. I call it Ronan O'Mullen there, sorry. Ronan Mullen is back in the studio making a rare appearance, semi-regular appearance.
Let's not make it seem like I just barged in here. I was invited.
Begged, in fact.
I didn't just walk into the studio.
I hear a slight tangents on, he said, and sat down.
It's nice to be back.
Indeed. So on the names on jerseys business, just before we sign off on this, I mean, it's a slight tangent topic in that it's utterly unimportant and yet very strong views being expressed. Phil says names on jerseys purely about money. Well, yeah, like that was literally, Phil, we read that. That's exactly what it is. He says, is anyone telling me that we wouldn't recognise any of the top Irish players if they didn't have names on the backs of their jerseys? It is total BS. No, you mightn't you'd recognise all the Irish players. You mightn't recognise other teams they're playing against. And yeah, it is about money and marketing and adding something to the sport. Tom Brady, TB12.
Yeah.
So that's his brand, his TB12.
Sorry, of course. Given up by Chris Godwin when he joined the Bucks. Like, you know,
Do you have to buy him a car or something? You gave him something nice anyway.
Certainly a big gesture there. Yeah.
I think with certain iconic players, the number is part of their mystique. Like, if you say the number 16 in football, we all think Michael Carrick.
Yeah, of course.
But you know, so
16's an interesting one in terms of the birth of squad number. So because Keane joined United the first year of squad numbers,
Right.
and Brian Robson was probably the place he was taking on the team, so therefore there wasn't the 1 to 11 available.
yeah.
And I always thought of it as this kind of like slight on Roy Keane for years. It like obviously eventually we got to the point where it was like, oh, that's Roy Keane, it's an iconic number. But the first like about 5 years at Manchester United, I was like, oh, I'd love him to move up into the single digits.
Yeah,
you know? Because it still mattered a lot more back then. Obviously now that's not the
I
case.
have a memory of his book where, in the first book, where he said he almost kept it in a sense like, I don't want to feel a part of the establishment here.
Yeah.
As in, I want to stay hungry.
Yeah.
It was kind of
Yeah,
his
so he
thinking.
was almost thinking the same thing in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as opposed
yeah.
to being 6. What do you? But just as we leave the numbers on jerseys thing, GAA, would you like to see it come in GAA? Would that work?
I think that's a more transient thing, funnily enough. that is a case of people come, people go. That it's not. I think it is too fluid for it. That it wouldn't. I don't think it makes sense. I just don't think if it's at county level that you have the jersey long enough to warrant it.
Having your name.
Like
You get a number for the year.
Well, I mean, but that's kind of technically already what happens. A little bit, like.
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, it can happen if it's like with replays and things like that. Or
I think with all the dummy teams being named and programmes being a waste of time, it'd be a good thing. You get to know players that way. Not least in hurling.
yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate why it would work for hurling, but like, put the name on the helmet or something. Why is that so funny?
You couldn't fit a name that could be read from
Get the surname on a
stands
helmet.
on a helmet.
Not on the stands, but you can't read from the back of a jersey from the stands. Probably not, unless it's very bold.
Who do you think makes the most?
We're getting into weird territory now.
So, I agree that actually in any way you can market GA players more is good for the game, right? But I do think you will read a lot of articles suggesting that names on the jerseys or more visible numbers are the most important thing facing us as an association and as a country, because the people writing them have a vested interest. And I don't mean that, like, I don't mean it in a glib way. Like, I mean, it is, I don't blame them, they're right. Life could definitely be easier for journalists, but it doesn't mean it's the most important thing. And I think sometimes we read these things. We go, well, look, I mean, you've all sat in the press box. You're trying to identify. How many times have you sat there going, Jesus, who scored that, lads? And then everyone's talking to each other because you're afraid of your life of getting, the name wrong on who scored something, or if you're doing stats or whatever. It is a difficult thing. It's a very, very fast, especially hurling, very fast-moving sport. Very difficult to identify when 5 Kilkenny forwards are all wearing the same green helmet.
Yeah.
And anything you can do to help, the better. But it doesn't make it that important for the sport overall.
No, I guess if you're doing it, it is generally like hurling. I think a little bit it does help with identification, but I think ultimately names and backs of jerseys is a marketing ploy, as we said at the very top for the English rugby motivation. It's to have a Toge 4 and that image and that name associated with it. So it's like, do you want Clifford 13 as a thing and his name on it and the number, or is it just cool enough that it's?
I think it's just
funny,
cool
like
enough. I don't think it requires
who
it.
gets the marketing uptick in that instance? Do you know what I mean? Like
GA at large, I
yeah, I
guess.
suppose. But when a player's so outstrips, not to suggest carry on, they're a decent entity in their own right. But when Clifford so eclipses like the brand almost himself these days, like he's just so big, and you see it anytime he plays anywhere. Like I was at that game in the athletic grounds in Armagh, where Armagh were going pretty well, needless to say, but all the children ran to see David Clifford when it was over.
Yeah.
So he would, if jersey sales were a thing and we could monitor them, he'd probably be top of the list. Like in the NFL, they release that list like once a month, who's the best-selling jersey, and it had been Brady for years, but it does vary. So I wonder who number 2 would be actually on that list.
But people aren't going to buy jerseys outside their own county anyway, are they?
Don't think so. Maybe Clifford might be an
Clifford
exception.
would be an
Couple of
exception.
years.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know, not in a football county, I wouldn't say. But
No.
the other one thing about giving up on, if you put names on jerseys, then you're presuming you're selling those jerseys. Like we were just talking about here, who would be the most sold. I think you'd lose one little bit of romance about the GA. So when you're walking over the bridge in Thurles, or walking down Clonliffe Road on the way to a match or on the way back, and everyone's got their jerseys on, and then every now and then you see somebody with the jersey on, but it's about 6 years old and it's got number 27 on the back, and you go, you play county.
Yeah. But imagine his name was on it. Imagine you got to know who it was, though. Jesus, Cunningham.
If everyone has a number, they're not going to stick out.
I'll tell you what, I like that though. I do like that. I like that. I wonder who that is. I wonder what his story is. Where'd it go wrong? Because he's like my age. He's not playing.
Yeah.
What about the novelty numbers? Where like someone clearly for their birthday is like, Paulie C 40. Oh God.
Oh, God.
Never let them go.
So a quick vote. Are we putting names on jerseys? You get your number and name for the year, yeah or no?
In rugby?
In GA?
No.
No?
I don't know, but I feel less strongly about it than I do about rugby. I would listen to arguments on this. I don't think it would be a big deal.
Arthur?
No, I wouldn't do it in the GA.
Leave it as is. Okay. Let's push on. Red Zone. You wanted to discuss Red Zone. What is Red Zone for anybody who maybe just on the half chance is not an NFL fan?
Yeah, so the NFL came back last week, and a lot of people live and die their NFL watching by Red Zone, which is Sky helpfully show on Sky Sports Mix, and then in America, obviously, it's on one of the channels. So basically, at 6 o'clock when the games kick off our time, Red Zone comes live. This guy, help me out with his name, Ronan.
Scott Hansen.
Scott Hansen comes on and is in a little studio and says, "Wow, we've got 7 games today," and blah blah blah. And then they go to the kickoffs, and suddenly you are watching basically all 7, 8 games at once. It goes on for 7 hours because there's the early games and then the late games. There are no ads.
Yeah.
It is literally just 7 hours of uninterrupted football, as they call it at the start. And they hop around the game, so it is constant. If they miss something, they'll give an alert. He'll show you the replay as they join the game live. They just go into the commentary teams. It's only Scott on his own. There's no analysts or anything like the way BT do, maybe the Champions League coverage.
Okay.
And
that's quite the broadcasting.
Scott on his own, and then again the commentary teams. So there's a live commentary team for each game. So they're going live. They might go for 5 minutes.
And do the commentary teams welcome Scott, or are they're too busy?
No. They're doing their own thing.
We just drop in.
He's bopping around the place to the individual broadcasts.
Okay.
Then you might have, like, if there's 2 red zone. Red zone is when a team is in the 20, within the 20-meter line. But they don't obviously exclusively show that, but that will be a red zone chance. They'll try to get to it then. And if there's 2 at the same time, they might go to the double box. If things go mad, they might go to the triple box.
Okay, so what are we saying about
game,
this?
There could be an octo box.
This sounds like a surefire hit. Is this outrageously popular?
Brilliant. And I look, I mean, I think especially in Ireland, an awful lot of people watch the NFL this way. You tune in, you're on top of everything. You get to see the most exciting games, because obviously they stop showing the blowouts later on. And it's like there was 2 games went to overtime this weekend, and there was another couple of close games, and it's like you are seeing all of the drama. It is fantastic. So I've been watching the NFL a lot, maybe 6-7 years like this, and I was really excited for it to come back, and I watched a huge amount of it on Sunday night. And look, don't get me wrong, it was brilliant. But then afterwards I was thinking, I feel like I know less about the NFL since I started this all-encompassing viewing than I did when I watched 2 games a week and maybe caught up with the highlights of other games. Mm-hmm. Because you have to remember, like, there's a narrative of a game, and there's a commentary that goes on, especially in a 3-hour NFL broadcast, that bring you through an awful lot of things. You get to know what maybe the offensive line is doing that you definitely won't know when you're watching live highlights, basically. You get to know defensive players. You get to know why a team, why it's not working for them, or why they're so on fire today, or, you know. And you lose out an awful lot on that in red zone. So, but it is hectic and it is brilliant. And when it's at its best, and when it gets down to that, there's a time that I would encourage everybody to watch, even if you're not that into NFL, which is at about maybe 8:45, maybe 8:30 until about 9:15, when the games are down to the wire, and there might be 4 or 5 of them that could be at the same time down to the wire, where it's television like I've never, ever experienced before. It's fantastic. But again, I'm just wondering this season, will I try to watch a few more individual games just to try and get a wider feel with, even though I'm watching a lot less, I'm only going to be watching 1 game. I think sometimes, I like, for example, if you were to do it in football, I feel like you'd lose. First of all, it's a much more fluid game, so it's much harder to point out when the chances are going to happen and when to be there for it. But I think you'd lose an awful lot of your understanding of how a game is won and how a game is lost. And yeah, I suppose I'm suddenly ambiguous in how I feel about Red Zone, despite its dramatic comeback at the weekend. Have you watched it?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Never very long, though.
Well,
It's exhausting.
the Scott Hansen element of it, as a broadcasting feat, it's up there with, like,
Oh, he's amazing.
Live Aid or, you know, Frost Nixon or something like that. It's incredible that he can actually do this for that long without
I would have thought Live Aid was an easy enough feat.
taking a breath. Oh, well.
Oh, not in 1985.
Come on, Joe.
You're just handing over to
They linked
next
up.
musician.
They're linking, like, all these different cities.
And
It's incredible.
Oh, sorry, from a technical point of view, yeah.
Yeah.
But in terms
Anyway,
of broadcasting skills.
televisually. I'm just talking.
Televisually, I agree, yeah.
But
I
I tend to, like, I would watch the individual games myself now, just because the Sky coverage I think is really good, and, like, with the exception of, so obviously you watch these games in America, every time they go to an ad break, they literally go to an ad break. You know, like on the Sky coverage, they cut back to studio and, like, will show highlights and analyse plays that have just happened. So I think that is quite useful, and, you know, it's a more comprehensive way of watching it. But Mick's right, like, there was a moment the other day where I had Red Zone on, and there was a triple box and 3 leads changed while the triple box was on. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like 2 field goals and a touchdown. I was like, at certain times it is incredible.
I can imagine. I suspect if there was a football version of this, I'd be all in on it because I know all the footballers. If there's a Premier League version of this, I'd sign up and watch it all. I find anytime I've tried to watch it, because I just don't know enough of the players, it starts to just wash over me a little bit and doesn't register with me. Whereas, you know, from my more limited vantage point, I remember, for instance, a Super Bowl 4 or 5 years ago where Julian Edelman was Brady's go-to man, and I remember like an hour in of absorbing this one game, I thought to myself, Julian Edelman's a freak, you know, and I hadn't thought too much about him. And so you don't get that with Red Zone. You just see yet another touchdown from another team and yet another player I haven't heard of. And I suspect if that player doesn't score another touchdown for the next 5 weeks in a row, I'm going to have forgotten his name by the time I sit again. It's like when you start college and you sit beside someone, you chat to them, and then you don't sit beside them for 5 weeks, and then you sit beside them again, and it's, oh my God, how you doing? Do we even talk? No, let's not bother at this stage. So that's been my limited experience.
You won't be surprised to know it's driven a lot by fantasy football.
Okay.
And other interests, like other vested interests in games and how they're playing out. So it's not just about the love of the game.
I think you're very right about that, in that's what keeps the interest in, like, the Giants versus whoever in the game, the two teams that have no chance of making the playoffs. But actually, it also does, in a very good way, actually, it keeps it sort of makes its choices based on how exciting the game is rather than how big the teams are.
Yeah.
In terms of what games it focuses on as the game goes on. So, like, there is an element of, like, there's something to be said for, do you know what, like, this game that doesn't look great on paper is really good, watch it and get to know it, and you do have a kind of a wider sense of the whole NFL. Now, the reason they get away with it and the reason people pay attention is because they might have fancy players on.
Are people watching the Champions League BT version over a Champions League game? I don't think that's ever.
I wouldn't say so, for the exact reason you were talking to. The people generally will have some affiliation or very thing to a team. Like, I imagine your Ravens, your Patriots, if they were on and you could watch one over the other, I'd assume you'd watch them over the Red Zone.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like I would find myself
recently for the Patriots.
Well, that's before.
Yeah.
It's a good double screen option. Like, you watch the game you want to watch, and then you just have that in the corner. That's the ultimate. That's the way to do it.
I've often done that Red Zone on the iPad or whatever and watched it.
And like TG Carr, to their credit, like as innovators on the GAA sphere, like they did it with the referee a couple of weeks ago, but on the final day of the league season, they're doing a similar thing. Like, they're cutting from game to game and keeping you up to date on who's going up as things stand, who's going down as things stand. So other places could learn a lot from what they do.
You know, it could work a dream on GA League. That's actually, because Premier League, because the 3 o'clock kickoff now is a handful of games and not very good ones. Like, the possibility for it to be a Premier League thing now is gone.
Yeah, there isn't enough games that aren't. They've already got those 5 TV slots a week, basically. So the max you can have is 5, and that's before you have the Sunday 2 o'clock games from European weeks and so on. So yeah, like, I completely agree that there is also, like, I would like to see it. I would like to see it on a Tuesday or Wednesday night when they have Premier League, that BT try it or something, just to see kind of what it's like. It just, in terms of just as an immersive experience though as well, it's an exhausting way to watch television. There's something to be said for ad breaks, and there's something to be said for just a break in general, because what you could do is you're obviously not going to sit there for 7 hours, but you could sit there thinking, I'm watching the first quarter here and I'm kind of into it, and you know, I'm getting warmed up. Then it gets exciting, and it's like the amount of times I've been like bursting for the toilet, just waiting for
pause.
It's a fair point actually. But when are you going to catch up though? There's no ad breaks.
We just forward through some of the chat, but I guess there's none.
It's more that you're just living on, this is about to happen, or what's about to happen, and it's just like you suddenly an hour passes. Like, very often you're like, Jesus Christ, it's 8:30 here.
Yeah,
I've just started. You know. Do
you know your point about the ads for American audiences, which Sky Sports in the main game don't have, so they cut back to like the Sky Sports studio and they do analysis. It's fine. I think American audiences get screwed by their ad breaks, because the golf is one of the most egregious examples. There are so many golf ad breaks on American TV, and so often they cut back to the Sky Sports panel, who then show a shot again, or get some extra footage that the American TV don't have time to show, but they'll cram in and say, oh, look at this, you know, this was DJ looking for his ball earlier, he had this conversation. Because you hear American golf podcasts complain all the time about how awful the TV coverage is, because they take ads all the time.
But you're like, there's a 2-minute warning in NFL for presumably no other reason than let's shoehorn another ad break in here, just like when the faz in the fire.
Okay.
Well, they have a set amount of ad breaks in the NFL that they take per half. and some of them are at set times, like 2-minute warnings, and some of them are at random timeouts, and some of them, and if they haven't used all the timeouts or whatever, they will just stop the game.
Do let ads in.
No, it's like they won't stop the clock. It'll
TV
be like
timeout.
out of bounds or something like that, and it'll be just like, right, sudden we'll go to a break. There's no explanation for it whatsoever. Like they have a set amount of breaks that they get to take and sometimes they use them all early, and it's like, Jesus, I've been watching this game for ages. They haven't gone to a break yet. What's going on?
They're at that, and we can't put a name on a jersey. For God's sake, grow up. We're out of time. So Arthur O'D, Mick McCarthy, thank you. Another episode of A Slight Tangent. Ronan Mullen, welcome back.
Thanks, lads.
And also farewell again until when do you want to pick a date for your next A Slight Tangent appearance?
As I said, I'm always there.
Okay.
about 15 metres away.
Okay. Still 1-1 half-time at Anfield. Short break. We'll try and do A Slight Tangent again next week.
Off the ball on News Talk.